He spent centuries keeping his heart locked behind cold walls. But the night she rested in his lap, the monster inside him began to remember what it meant to be human, and love became the only danger he could not control. The strange thing about his story is that it never begins with power. It begins with loneliness, the kind that follows a man even when entire kingdoms bow to him. The castle was silent that night, except for the slow, steady sound of rain touching the old stone walls. The vampire king sat alone on his throne, not out of pride, but because distance had become his only protection. For centuries, people feared his eyes, his silence, his coldness, and he allowed it. It was easier to be a legend than to risk being hurt again. Yet there was a quiet compassion inside him he never spoke about. He watched the world in small, careful ways. He ordered food to be left for the poor outside the castle gates. He fixed broken roofs when storms destroyed them. He listened to the cries in the night, even when he pretended not to care. Kindness lived inside him, but he hid it like a fragile flame. The girl arrived on a winter evening, trembling at the gate. She didn't come with soldiers or lies or fear. She simply came because she had nowhere else left to go. Soaked by rain, scared but stubborn, she refused to leave when the guards told her to run. There was something humble in the way she stood there, not begging, not demanding, simply hoping someone would see her. When he finally stepped out of the shadows to look at her, the world seemed to pause. She didn't scream, she didn't bow, she just whispered softly, "You look tired." No one had spoken to him like that in decades, not as a king, not as a monster, but as a person. He could have sent her away, he should have. Keeping distance was how he survived. Instead, he let her inside. He gave her warmth, a meal, a place to rest. He told himself it was temporary, just one night, just kindness, nothing more. But as the firelight softened the darkness, she drifted to sleep beside him on the couch, her head resting carefully against his lap, like she trusted him more than the world that had hurt her. His hands trembled. He didn't understand why his chest felt lighter or why the silence suddenly felt less heavy. And in that moment, for the first time in centuries, he realized something terrifying. He wanted her to stay the next morning. The castle seemed different, even though nothing had changed. Sunlight slipped carefully through the tall windows, touching the dust in the air like tiny golden sparks. Servants moved quietly, whispering as if something sacred was sleeping. And there, on the velvet couch, the girl still rested peacefully, her breathing soft and steady. The vampire king stood a few steps away, watching her with a strange mixture of fear and wonder. He had seen wars, he had faced ancient creatures, he had lived through centuries of betrayal and loss, but this gentle presence, frightened him more than anything else. Because closeness always came with pain. He turned away sharply, convincing himself again. Oh, she cannot stay. Oh, she must leave. This is safer for both of us. He tried to harden his voice. When she woke, he spoke carefully, like someone handling glass. "You can go now, you are safe. My guards will protect you until you find another home." She looked at him quietly, not hurt, not angry, just thoughtful. "Why do you always stand so far away?" she asked softly. No one had ever asked him that. He had been called cursed, ruthless, immortal, cold, but never distant in a way that sounded like concern. Her question cracked something deep inside him, something fragile that had been sealed for too long. He searched for words, and the truth slipped out before he could stop it. "Because everything close to me eventually breaks." She didn't answer with arguments. She didn't try to fix him. She simply stepped a little closer and whispered, "I am not here to take anything from you." Those words unsettled him more than anything else. People always wanted something: power, protection, secrets, but she wanted nothing except a place to breathe. Still, he forced himself to turn away. Kindness was one thing, attachment was another. He ordered the guards to prepare her departure. Hours passed, the carriages waited at the gate, servants packed food and blankets, everything was arranged. Oh, and yet, he couldn't step outside. His chest felt heavy, like something important was being torn away. He walked the halls restlessly, past portraits of rulers long gone, past memories that no longer had names. Each step echoed with the same thought. Why does it hurt to let her go? Finally, he went to the balcony and looked down. She stood there alone near the carriage, touching the old stone with gentle hands, as if saying goodbye to something she somehow understood. And then he saw it. Not fear, not disappointment, just quiet sadness, as if leaving meant losing the first place where she finally felt safe. For a long moment, he couldn't breathe. He didn't move like a king when he went down the stairs. He moved like a man trying not to lose something he didn't yet know how to keep. When he reached her, she bowed slightly, not out of duty, but gratitude. "Thank you for last night," she said softly. "I will remember the kindness." Oh, he wanted to nod. He wanted to let her go. Instead, his voice came out softer than he expected. "Well, stay another night," he said. Her eyes widened, surprised, but not afraid. "Just one?" she asked. Oh, he hesitated. "One," he lied, even though something inside him already knew the truth. That night she sat beside him again, calmer, more at peace. They didn't talk much, they didn't need to. Silence wasn't cold anymore. It felt like warmth slowly opening inside old stone walls. And when sleep found her again, she leaned gently into his lap as if it was the most natural place in the world. His hands stopped trembling. For the first time in centuries, he did not feel like a monster watching over his kingdom. He felt like someone trusted, someone needed. But deep inside, a quiet fear began to grow. If she stays longer, what will it cost him? And what secret hidden in his past will finally rise to test them both? Oh, the night grew deeper. The candles burned lower. And somewhere far beyond the castle walls, something old and dangerous had already begun to move toward them, the distance he no longer knew how to keep. Rain had washed the night away, but the feeling remained. The Vampire King sat near the window, watching the morning light crawl slowly across the castle floor. He wasn't used to mornings. He wasn't used to softness. And he definitely wasn't used to waking up with someone sleeping against him. She was still there. Quiet, breathing gently, resting as if the world outside could no longer hurt her. His hand hovered above her hair, uncertain. He had touched battlefields, thrones, graves, but this felt more dangerous than all of them, not because it was dark, but because it was warm. And warmth was something he had forgotten how to hold. He told himself she should leave. He whispered it inside his own chest. "This is temporary. She will go, and things will be normal again." But as he thought it, something inside him tightened painfully. When she finally opened her eyes, she didn't panic. She didn't jump away. She simply looked up at him, sleepy and innocent, as though waking beside an ancient immortal king was the most natural thing in the world. "Good morning," she said softly. "No fear, no worship, no shame. Just human." That single moment disarmed him more than any sword ever could. He stood up quickly, creating distance, wrapping himself again in the cold authority that had protected him for centuries. "Oh, you cannot stay," he said quietly. There was no anger in his voice, only fear. The kind of fear that comes from remembering every person who had walked into his life and never survived it. She didn't argue. She sat up slowly, folded her hands, and nodded like someone who understood that sometimes pain doesn't shout, it hides. "Thank you for letting me rest," she whispered. Those simple words pierced him. Gratitude, not demand, not pleading. Gratitude for kindness he didn't believe he deserved. He sent the guards to prepare her travel. Rooms were cleared, cloaks were packed, horses saddled, Everything moved with practiced precision. The process of sending people away was something his kingdom had learned too well. But his thoughts refused to obey. As he walked through the long corridors, memories pressed against him. The friend he couldn't save, the queen who betrayed him, the loyal knight who died in his name. Every story ended the same way, closeness turning into loss. He stopped at a cracked mirror, one he rarely faced. His reflection looked back, pale, powerful, unreadable. This is right, he told himself. Yet the reflection's eyes looked lonely. Outside, the courtyard filled with quiet wind. She stood alone beside the carriage, fingers brushing the stone walls gently as though memorizing the feeling of safety. Not wealth, not power, but safety. And that was when he understood. She didn't come to take anything. She came because life had taken everything from her. He walked down slowly, the guards bowed, the world held its breath. She turned to him and smiled, small, respectful, grateful. I won't forget you, she said softly. You helped without asking anything back, that matters. Something inside him cracked wide open. For centuries, he had been a king surrounded by people, yet unseen. This girl in one night saw him. He should have nodded, he should have let her leave. Instead, the words escaped before he could stop them. Oh, stay. She blinked, surprised. For how long? There was a pause, long, heavy, full of something he wasn't ready to name. Just one more night, he lied gently. Her smile was soft, not excited, not dramatic, simply peaceful. That evening, the castle did not feel haunted. Candles glowed warmly. The storm passed. The hallways felt less endless. They sat together not as king and guest, not as monster and human, but simply as two souls who had carried too much for too long. She rested again against him. His hand finally touched her hair, slow, careful, like a man learning how to hold something fragile without breaking it. And in the quiet, a truth whispered through his chest. I don't want to be alone anymore. But deep beneath the castle, inside walls older than his throne, something ancient shifted, something tied to his past, something that did not welcome light. And as the night deepened, a distant echo traveled through the earth, like a warning only he could feel. The peace would not last. His past was coming back. And it would test the one thing he had finally begun to care about, the secret he never wanted anyone to see. The castle grew quieter at night, but inside the Vampire King, storms began to rise. He stood alone in the corridor after she fell asleep, his hand resting on the cold stone wall. Something beneath the castle pulsed like a distant heartbeat. It wasn't sound, it was memory, an old promise, an old curse. For years, he had sealed it away. And now it was waking. He went to the ancient chambers beneath the throne room, where torches burned slowly and the air smelled like dust and time. Carved symbols covered the walls, each one a reminder of what he once did to protect his kingdom. He whispered to the silence, not now, please, not when I finally feel at peace. But the silence didn't answer. Instead, it reminded him of the truth. Peace never lasts when it is built on secrets. Above him, she slept, small, gentle, trusting. And that trust terrified him. Because if she ever knew what he had done, would she still choose to stay? He returned quietly to the room where she rested. Candlelight danced across her face. She slept curled against the velvet cushions, like someone who finally felt safe after too many nights running. For a moment, he simply watched. He noticed the tiny scar on her wrist, the way her hands curled protectively near her heart, the exhaustion beneath her peaceful expression. She had survived things she hadn't spoken about yet, and somehow, instead of turning bitter, she had remained soft. Soft and brave. He sat beside her, knowing he shouldn't, knowing closeness meant danger. Yet when she shivered, he instinctively wrapped a cloak around her shoulders. As she stirred, opening her eyes slowly. "Oh, you're still here," she whispered. Oh, he nodded. "I don't sleep," he replied softly. She studied his face, but not with curiosity, with understanding. "That must be lonely." He almost laughed, not out of humor, but out of disbelief. Kings had feared him, enemies had bowed, legends had turned his name into shadow, and yet she saw the one thing everyone missed. A loneliness. For a moment, the walls inside him lowered. He told her about the nights he spent walking empty halls, the weight of immortality, the thousands of goodbyes. He didn't share everything, but he shared enough that the silence no longer felt sharp. She listened without judgment. She didn't pity him, she simply stayed. And then, gently, she spoke. "I lost my family too," she said, "not to death but to fear. They stopped believing I was worth protecting, so I learned to protect myself." Her voice trembled, but she didn't hide. He felt something ache in his chest, empathy, quiet and painful. "You were not meant to do that alone," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Nobody ever stays long enough to help." Those words burned, because he recognized himself in them. He reached out, hesitated, then rested his hand gently over hers. "Not as a king, not as a savior, just as someone who finally understood." "I will not hurt you," he said quietly. A promise he meant, even if he didn't yet know how to keep it. But the castle trembled faintly, almost too subtle to notice. Something beneath them had awakened fully now. The torches downstairs flickered, the air shifted. The magic he sealed centuries ago stirred like a beast remembering hunger. And the truth he had buried was this. The reason he never let anyone close was because anyone who stayed too near him became part of the curse. For the first time in many years, fear, real fear, crawled through him. Not fear of losing power, a fear of losing her. He looked at her, peaceful again, leaning beside him, trusting him without question, and he knew. The past would soon come for her, not just for him. And when it did, he would be forced to choose between the kingdom he swore to protect and the one soul who finally reminded him what it meant to feel human. The candles flickered. The ground sighed. Something ancient whispered his name from the depths. And he realized he could no longer hide from what he had become, the choice that finally set him free. The whisper from beneath the castle grew stronger. By morning, the sky had turned a dull silver, as if the world itself sensed something difficult approaching. The vampire king stood at the highest tower, eyes fixed on the horizon, heart heavy with a fear he could no longer hide. The curse he carried was never meant to touch another life. Yet somehow she had walked right into his world. He heard soft footsteps behind him. She stood there quietly, wrapped in the cloak he had given her, the wind lifting her hair. There was worry in her eyes, not for herself, but for him. "Something is wrong," she said gently. He didn't deny it. For the first time, he decided not to lie. "Long ago," he began, voice low, "my kingdom was dying, enemies surrounded us. Famine spread. Desperation made me accept a bargain I did not understand." He stared at his hands, strong, immortal, yet bound. "I asked for strength to protect everyone, and I received it, but with a price. Anyone who stays close to me for too long becomes tied to the curse. They don't die, they don't suffer, but they slowly lose themselves, they forget who they are, as if the shadow of eternity steals their light." His voice cracked, rare, raw. "That is why I keep distance. That is why nobody stays." Silence wrapped around them like winter. She didn't step back. She didn't run. Instead, she whispered, "And you carried all of that alone." He turned away. "I would rather be alone than watch another soul fade because of me." Then came the sound, deep, rumbling like thunder inside stone. The sealed chamber beneath the castle burst open. Ancient magic bled through the floors, crawling upward, searching not for him, for her, because the curse had already recognized something he refused to admit. He had let her into his heart, and that made her part of the bargains. Torches snapped, windows shook, walls groaned. She swayed slightly but did not scream. She only clutched his sleeve, steadying herself, trusting him more than the world breaking around them. He caught her instantly. His decision came without hesitation. For centuries, he chose the kingdom over himself. This time, he chose differently. Stay behind me," he said softly. They descended into the ancient chamber, where the air glittered with dark energy, not violent, not bloody, simply cold, like forgotten promises. In the center, the seal pulsed. A voice rose from it, old, echoing, neither kind nor cruel. "You asked to protect your world," it spoke. "And so you will forever, alone, untouched, unbroken." He tightened his grip on her hand. "Take my power back," he said quietly. "Take the throne, take the immortality, but release her." The chamber trembled. You would give everything for one fragile human." He didn't hesitate. Yes." For the first time in centuries, his answer was not about duty, but love, quiet and selfless. The seal flared not with darkness, but with light. For curses are not always punishments. Sometimes they are mirrors waiting for a heart brave enough to choose differently. His energy wrapped around him, pulling, burning, unmaking. He felt his strength break, his immortality dissolve, his bones become human again. Pain surged, not violent, but overwhelming, like letting go of everything he had carried. She cried out and tried to reach for him. He shook his head gently. "Don't," he whispered. "Live, remember who you are, keep your light." Tears slipped from her eyes. "I don't want a king," she said softly. "I don't want power, I just didn't want to be alone anymore." He smiled, tired, peaceful. "Neither did I." The magic burst. When it faded, the chamber fell quiet. The throne room, the walls, the symbols all remained, but the cold eternity was gone. And there, on the stone floor, lay a man, not a monster, not an immortal ruler, just a human, breathing, weak, alive. She fell to her knees beside him, pressing her forehead against his. "Oh, you're here," she whispered through tears. His heart beat slow, steady, for the first true time in centuries. The seal vanished. The curse ended. The kingdom did not fall. It simply changed. Without fear ruling it, people stepped closer. They rebuilt not out of obedience, but respect. The castle filled with laughter instead of echoes. And every night, when the world grew quiet, he sat in the old throne room, not as a king, but as a man, while she rested peacefully with her head in his lap, not because she was trapped there, but because she chose to. And he finally understood. Love isn't control. Love isn't possession. Love is freedom, even when it requires sacrifice. The legend of the vampire king faded into stories. But in that quiet castle, somewhere between candlelight and dawn, two people learned that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is not immortality. It is the courage to be soft again, learning how to live again. Time passed quietly after the curse broke. Not fast, not dramatic, just real. The castle was no longer a place of fear. Sunlight visited more often. Birds nested near the windows. The echo of footsteps changed, not heavy, not guarded, but relaxed, like the building itself had finally started to breathe. He was different now. Not weaker, not smaller, just human. And being human again meant discovering things he hadn't felt in centuries. Mornings, he woke to the sound of wind instead of silence, sometimes to laughter from the courtyard, sometimes to her voice humming as she carried warm bread into the main hall. Each sound felt like a gentle reminder. You are still alive. The first days were difficult. His body tired easily. Cold weather made his hands shake. Sometimes his heart raced when memories of the past tried to return like ghosts. But now he didn't face it alone. One afternoon, he sat on the castle steps, staring at the horizon where the old battlefield once stretched. He looked thoughtful, distant, almost like the king he used to be, but softer. She joined him quietly, handing him a cup of tea. No questions, no pressure, just a presence. Do you miss it? She finally asked. He thought for a long moment. The power, no, he said softly, but I miss believing that holding everything alone made me strong. She smiled gently. Strength looks different now. They watched villagers below rebuilding houses together, sharing tools, helping one another. No one bowed in fear anymore. They waved, they smiled. And he waved back, awkward at first. Then, naturally. Some evenings, the weight of the past still returned, old mistakes, old guilt, old echoes of the legend he once was. Those nights he paced the halls, afraid the darkness might claim him again. She found him every time. Not with speeches, not with magic, just a simple hand, gently lacing fingers with his. You don't have to be that man anymore, she would whisper. And slowly, his breathing steadied. They built new routines together. They planted flowers near the abandoned courtyard. They opened the castle gates so children could play near the fountain. They turned the old war room into a library filled with quiet places to rest. Kindness, the thing he once hid, became the very thing the castle carried. But the most meaningful moments were the smallest ones. An evening rain tapping softly against the windows. Her laughter echoing through stone corridors. The sound of his heartbeat steady, warm, when she rested her head in his lap like she always had, not out of fate, but out of love. One night, as candles burned low, she looked up at him with curious eyes. What does it feel like now? She asked. He thought carefully. Like I am finally allowed to live instead of only protect, he said, and like my heart is finally my own. She nodded. Quiet, content. They didn't speak for a while. Instead, they listened to the wind, to distant voices, to the peace that had slowly replaced fear. But peace does not mean nothing happens. It means when things happen, you face them together. One day, a messenger arrived carrying news. A distant village was struggling after harsh storms. Roofs gone, fields ruined, people frightened. The old king inside him wanted to handle it alone. Instead, he gathered the people, farmers, builders, healers, neighbors. Together they traveled not as soldiers, but as helpers. He lifted broken beams with shaking human arms. He carried food. He laughed when mud covered his clothes. He listened to each story like it mattered because it did. And in helping others without fear, without legend, without shadow, he felt stronger than he ever had as an immortal king. That night, returning home exhausted, he collapsed on the couch as she smiled at him. You look tired, she tased gently, repeating the first words she ever said to him. He laughed softly, and happier than I have ever been. She curled into his lap, comfortable, safe. His hand moved through her hair, no longer trembling. Outside, the moon climbed slowly. Inside, the castle glowed with candlelight and quiet warmth. They did not promise forever, because forever had cost him too much before. Instead, they promised something better, to choose each other every day, with kindness, with patience, with courage. And when the world felt heavy, they returned to the same simple truth. Love does not need power to survive. It only needs two hearts willing to stay. The legend of the Vampire King became a story grandparents told children, not about fear, but about a man who gave up eternity so that both he and the people he loved could finally live. And somewhere, late at night, with her asleep in his lap, he whispered to the quiet, "This is enough. Not as a king, not as a myth, but as someone finally free the night he finally forgave himself." There are moments in life that don't make noise. They don't arrive with storms or miracles. They come quietly like a breath and somehow change everything. One evening, long after the kingdom had healed and laughter had returned to the halls, the vampire king, now simply a man, stood alone in the old throne room. The throne was still there. Tall, cold, carved with symbols of battles long finished. He hadn't sat on it since the curse broke. Not because he hated it, but because it reminded him of the person he used to be. Strong on the outside, terrified inside, always trying to hold the world together by himself. He touched the armrest slowly. Memories rose, crowds shouting, soldiers kneeling, friends lost, choices made out of fear. His chest tightened not from regret, but from something heavier. Guilt. Because even though he had sacrificed immortality, even though he had chosen love and kindness, a part of him still whispered, "You failed. You hurt people. You should have been better." He closed his eyes. The room felt like it always had large, empty echoing. But this time, instead of turning away, he let himself feel everything he had pushed aside for centuries. The mistakes, the loneliness, the weight of trying to be perfect when perfection was impossible. The soft footsteps entered the room. She didn't speak right away. She watched him quietly, understanding there was something sacred in silence. "This place still hurts you," she finally said. He nodded. "I made so many wrong choices here," he whispered. "I saved lives, but I also lost some. I tried to protect everyone, and still people suffered." His voice shook, not with fear, but honesty. "How do I live knowing I could not fix everything?" She walked closer, placing her hand over his heart. "By remembering you were human long before you became human again," she said softly. "And humans don't save the world alone. They simply do their best and learn." Her words settled gently, like warm rain. He looked at the throne again. It no longer felt like judgment. It felt like history, something that happened, not something that owned him. Slowly, he sat not as a ruler reclaiming power, but as a man facing his past without running. And for the first time, sitting there didn't fill him with cold. It filled him with acceptance. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. "I forgive the man who didn't know better." The words surprised him. They loosened something inside his chest, like a knot finally undone. Tears formed, not dramatic, not painful, just honest. She didn't wipe them away. She let them fall because sometimes healing means letting the heart speak without shame. When the tears stopped, he breathed easier. Lighter, steadier. They left the throne room hand in hand. As they stepped into the courtyard, evening light washed the stone in soft gold. Children played near the fountain. Villagers shared bread and stories. Music drifted gently through the air. It didn't feel like a kingdom. It felt like a home. Later, as night deepened, they sat by the fire. She curled into his lap again the way she always had, peaceful, safe, warm. The world outside faded to quiet. He looked at her, at the person who taught him to feel again, to choose softness over control, courage over fear. And he finally understood something simple. Redemption isn't one moment. It's choosing kindness again and again, even on the days it feels difficult. He brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, "Thank you for staying." She smiled without opening her eyes. "Thank you for letting yourself be loved." The fire crackled. The night wrapped around them gently. And somewhere beneath the same stars that once watched his darkest days, the man who had once been a cursed king closed his eyes, not with fear, not with duty, but with peace. The story did not end with power. It ended with something quieter, stronger, and truer. A life finally lived the day they opened the gates. The spring arrived softly, not with loud celebrations, but with quiet signs, fresh leaves along the stone walls, tiny flowers pushing through cracks that once felt permanent, warmer light touching places that had been dark for years. The castle, like the people inside it, was learning how to live again. One morning he walked along the courtyard path with her beside him. No guards followed. No one bowed. Villagers moved freely, carrying baskets, laughing, fixing old wells, painting door frames with bright colors. For the first time, the castle belonged to everyone. And that changed him in ways he didn't expect. He stopped to help an elderly woman lift a bucket. His hands shook, still getting used to human strength, but she smiled kindly as if saying, "It's enough." Children rushed past, chasing each other, one of them bumping into him. The boy froze, waiting for anger the kind kings once carried like weapons. Instead, he knelt. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The boy nodded, surprised, then giggled and ran off again. She watched him quietly, warmth in her eyes. "Oh, you're different with them," she said softly. "I was always meant to be," he replied. "I just didn't know how." Later, they stood by the main gates, the massive wooden doors that had once symbolized fear, power, and separation. They had been closed for centuries, opened only for war or royal announcements. Now they stood half open. People came and went freely. Farmers brought vegetables to share, musicians carried instruments, travelers stopped to rest without fear of punishment. The castle wasn't a fortress anymore. It was a crossing place, a place where lives touched. He touched the old iron handle, feeling the history in the wood, the loneliness, the distance. Then he looked at her. "Should we?" he asked. She nodded, smiling. Together, slowly, they pushed the doors wide. Light flooded the entryway. A breeze moved through the halls like a long sigh finally released. Villagers paused, watching the moment not as witnesses of a royal decree, but as part of something they belonged to. No speeches were made. No declarations. Just open space, an invitation to trust the world again. As evening approached, music filled the courtyard. Neighbors shared food, stories, tiny jokes that made everyone laugh. Someone played a violin, someone else sang a lullaby. Life wove itself gently through stone walls once used to silence. He sat on the steps, watching, not ruling, not controlling, simply being. She joined him, leaning into his shoulder. The sky turned rosy, then deep blue. Lanterns glowed softly. After a while, she whispered, "Do you ever wish things had been easier?" He thought for a long time. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but if everything had been easy, I might never have learned what matters." "And what matters?" she asked. He looked at the open gates, at children playing, strangers sharing meals, laughter echoing under the night sky, and then at her. "Connection," he said, and the courage to keep our hearts open even when it scares us. Oh, she smiled. Later that night, as always, they found their quiet corner by the fire. She rested gently in his lap, safe and peaceful. He listened to the crackle of wood, the faint music outside, the steady rhythm of his own human heart. Oh, he thought about who he used to be. Oh, he didn't hate that man's. Oh, he simply understood him now. Afraid, lonely, trying too hard to be strong in the only way he knew. And because he understood him, he could finally let him go. The flames danced soft gold across the room, and he whispered, not to the past, not to fate, not to any curse, but to the quiet. May whoever walks through these gates find safety, warmth, and someone who truly sees them. It wasn't a king's command. It was a blessing. And somehow the castle felt warmer after he said it, as if walls themselves believed in kindness now. Outside, the night carried laughter. Inside, peace settled gently around them both. And the world, once filled with shadows and fear, became a place where love didn't have to hide anymore.